morning, YouTube. Tire Metalhead Weatherman here. Hopefully you guys are doing well. In this one, we are going to be looking at the rest of the week ahead here. It's going to be a pretty active week from the looks of it, because we literally went from, oh, Tornado Alley's dead, to seeing this. We have a slight risk today, and we have a slight risk Friday, and I think Thursday probably will be also upgraded to a slight risk. So that's the look that we have right now. Let's go ahead and take a look more in depthly on today's risk. Look where we are again. Very familiar area, isn't it? Texas-New Mexico border has been a hot spot over the last week, and we are going to continue to see more storms over this area. This time today, now, we have a 2% TOR risk, or a 2% tornado risk. For those of you that aren't super familiar with storm chasing, with weather storm chasing lingo. But the main threat today is damaging winds and hail for right now. I think hail might be the higher threat, although there is more damaging wind potential than in previous weeks. But we're going to be keeping a close eye on this. Going to try to go live for this, but the timing of the storms may be a little bit difficult. I'll get into that once I start looking at the models here. We go into day 2, and here's another interesting area. This is more so towards the Texas-Oklahoma panhandle. Nonetheless, though, it looks like over towards New Mexico line, there's still a little chance for action. So far, there's no upgrade to slight risk, but I do see one coming based on the parameters that I've seen for the day. All three hazards right now are at marginal levels, 2% and 5%. But I do anticipate some changes there. Then, on Friday is really hot, especially across southern and central Texas. Somebody mentioned this to me on the live stream. Shout out to them because they called it pretty well. But between Lubbock and pretty much the Texas-Mexico border here, it seems like a hot spot for severe weather. Not too sure what the main hazard is with this, but I think all three could be in play. We're starting to see a setup that's a little bit more resemblant of a classic severe setup. We're starting to see a trough that's starting to set up here over the western plains once more, resulting in as what somebody named Reed Timmer would call Western Plains insanity. And here's a good look at it. We have a trough right here, and actually this looks like it's taking a negative tilt here. So with that, while it's not the most impressive trough in our hotspot, so to speak, we do get that little bit of a ski jump look, which is usually indicative of a little bit of a maximum that jumps out ahead of that main area. And wherever those conditions meet up on the eastern flank of this trough is going to be where the highest likelihood of severe weather is going to be. And this is going to be persistent over the next couple of days here. So even as that low begins to deteriorate here, that you're seeing here, that's represented by this circle, as time goes on, we're going to get little small jet streaks, the very weak ones though, that end up going over these areas, and it's going to provide the lift needed for storms to develop, depending on if the cap isn't too strong. From what I've seen on soundings and hordeograph models, it looks like that it's not going to be strong enough to really stop too much. But when I look at the shortwave level, the mid-level part of the trough, plenty of sufficient energy is expected. Here's tonight's setup, for example. We have a decent short level. This is probably one of the better shortwave troughs, one of the better shortwave troughs that I've seen over the last couple of weeks. And like I said, you don't want to look directly over these areas. You want to kind of look on the eastern flank of this setup here. This is most likely where you would end up seeing severe weather. Also, with this setup not being incredible, so to speak, it's not going to be, I don't expect a lot of storms to be long-lasting if they are going to be tornadic. A few of them could be, but it all depends on how the shortwave acts. But shortwaves are very difficult to forecast. Literally, that could come down to last minute, last hour forecast. So really be prepared for a nowcast situation if you are under a severe weather threat, particularly if you have a tornado threat too. Shortwave on Friday night looks interesting, to say the least. There's a couple of different points of interest here that I would be looking at, especially on the eastern flanks of these. I have seen some soundings that are indicative of a tornado threat, but it's a little bit early to go into the later days, such as Friday, for right now. So now we go and we take a look at the low-level jet here. It's going to be a little harder to see because of the mountains over here towards New Mexico. This is also going to play a part in influencing severe weather as well. Those mountains can provide short waves of their own and lift. That's it's a little bit more advanced stuff we'll get into maybe in another future video. But from what you can see here, the low-level jet really starts to ramp up here once we get late into the evening. I do think we'll start to lose our instability at that point, so storms won't be able to maintain. But the low-level jet really does try to pick up here. And from this point on Thursday to Friday, once we clear those mountains, things do get a little bit more interesting as we start to look at this region here. This one has a severe tag on it, but it has plenty of downward cape. One issue that we have here, and I'm going to go ahead and try to mark this if I can, is, okay, that's not the right mark. Okay, there we go. The one problem we have here isn't this area. I marked the wrong thing now. But it's this right here. It's the CINH. It's convective inhibition, or basically it's indicative of a capping inversion pretty much. We're at negative 114 here. It's a pretty strong cap here. That low-level jet being where it is, I do think there's enough lift to break this, but nonetheless, it creates a little bit of uncertainty there. I wouldn't call this necessarily a fail parameter, so to speak, but it does play a part in maybe limiting storm production over this area. It's probably why we haven't seen an upgrade to slight risk yet. But another thing to make note of here is the downward cape, which is pretty high. It's at 1083. Usually you want to look around about 800 and 900 to have a sufficient threat. We're well above 1,000 here, so damaging wind potential is definitely on the rise with this storm for Thursday. We'll probably see a slight risk issued for at least damaging winds, if not hail. And as we go towards Friday night, we don't have a very strong low-level jet, but interesting thing to note is the direction that we have those winds going at the low levels. I do think that it could be possible and not unreasonable to think that storms could probably form a squall line here and maybe even move in a slightly north or northeastward component. But we'll have to wait and see how things go here. I'm going to show the other parameters because I'm running short on time already. I'm geeking out on this. Okay, so dew points. We still have a pretty sufficient moist sector here. And on Wednesday night, looks like we're getting into the low 50s to mid 60s. More than sufficient enough for severe weather. Thursday looks even more impressive over this region, especially towards the southern fringes of the Texas Oklahoma line here around the panhandles. And then Friday we have to watch towards southern Texas. And of course we're seeing that little blotch of slightly lower values, but even so we're still getting into those 60s here. Anywhere across this region particularly, I would say I'd be a little bit more concerned with severe weather. Oops, I've done something to my screen. Sorry about that, guys. But right around here is where I would be concerned with that threat for severe weather, just as the Storm Prediction Centers mentioned. You can easily see right here with these higher dew points that the threat is going to be greatest here. So that being said here, I'm going to move that, and then we're going to keep the ball rolling here. We look at temperatures for the week across the entire country. Still going to be relatively warm. We're starting to get out of that little miniature cold snap that tried to develop over here. Even into Canada now, we're starting to get into the 80s. Over towards the Northeast and the Mid-Atlantic, we're still stuck in those 60s and 70s. I've been hearing a couple people looking for 80s. We're getting close, but we aren't quite there just yet. The warmest of air is not able to make it that far yet. Our setup just kind of does not really yield to higher temperatures being over towards the mid-Atlantic right now because of the way the trough is set up at the moment, at least. It's going to be close though. I do think towards mid-June, maybe we could see some 80s begin to develop here. I know there's going to probably be a few mixed responses there. But pretty much this is going to be the trend this week. Definitely going to be really warm out to the east. Towards the west, we may see a little bit of a cool down with that trough coming in. I don't expect it to have a lot of cold air with it, so we'll probably see closer to average temperatures out towards the heart of the western half of the country. Maybe even a little bit below average, but nothing too dramatic at the moment. And then look to what I see towards the early part of the weekend here. This is towards mid-afternoon Saturday. I do see a couple of 80s trying to develop here. So maybe for some of us here, we could end up getting what we're looking for. I've had a viewer here that's been wondering if they'll get to the 80s, but this is a promising sign here. So just hang in there if you're looking for those 80-degree temperatures. But one other thing to note with this temperature increase over here towards the central and eastern half of the country is that the plains are going to be hot. They're going to be humid. Perfect environment for thunderstorms. That's going to be the most eventful thing that we have going on this week. That and an increase in fire danger out west. So with that, we can also look at Cape in conjunction with everything else. We have some pretty high Cape values over here. In fact, towards this region, I'm a little bit more concerned with the tornado threat, but at this time, I may end up missing it because 21Z for me is about 3 p.m. I'll still be at work. I'm trying to make sure I got the math right in my head. It would be about 3 or 4 p.m. if I look at 21Z. By the time I get to OZ, it's about 7, 8 p.m. I'm usually home by this point, so I should be able to cover anything that happens after that time frame. The one thing that I've noticed with this system, the Cape seems to be a little bit more impressive earlier in the day. If the cap breaks, it could become a big thing. And this is looking into Thursday. Really unstable over here towards the Texas, Oklahoma panhandles here. And that maintains itself into the evening and even tries to get into Kansas here. So we'll definitely be looking to try to go live tomorrow, if not today as well. Then on Friday, a lot of instability very early in the day across parts of central and west central Texas, southern Texas as well. And this persists all the way into the latter part of the evening here, maybe even into the morning hours. But that's pretty much what we have going on here. Threat looks like it starts to shift a little bit further to the east here, as far as us getting into Saturday morning, Saturday afternoon-ish. But not much certainty with that right now. We're a little too far out. So again, towards the western plains, south central plains, we'll be watching you guys for the threat of severe weather. Finally, we're going to take one quick look at what the radar could look like, and we're going to kind of just go from there because I got to get going. So as a whole, severe weather expected across parts of the central plains, southern plains. I actually saw a lake of snow right here towards Utah. Interesting. This is towards Thursday afternoon, midday Thursday across Utah, where you could see that. Probably going to be in the highest points of elevation right there. And on Friday, pretty much a similar deal. There's also one thing that we need to make note of here, as I push this back a little bit. There is a 20% chance right now of this little tropical low may be developing into our first named storm here, possibly. So that's another thing to keep an eye on if you're here in Florida right now. I think the odds are low. I don't think the conditions are favorable enough just yet, but that could easily change. We've seen a lot of crazy changes just in this month alone, so it wouldn't surprise me if this did develop. So let's make sure we're keeping an eye on it here in Florida. Don't think it's anything that you guys will bat an eye to. I don't expect this to strengthen into a major hurricane, so I'm not too worried about that. But this will cause disruptive weather for anyone that wants to be on the beach or outside. I know it's vacation season, so just make sure you are being weather aware across these regions. This could spark some showers, storms, maybe even a couple of water spouts. So make sure we're doing our part here to keep ourselves safe over here in Florida. But that's pretty much all I got for you guys. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, you know what to do. Smash that like button. Slam that bell. Obliterate that subscribe button and the share button. And also, if you got any questions in the comment, always welcome. But anyway, I'm going to get the heck out of here. This has been Tire Metalhead Weatherman. I hope to see you guys tonight at the live, hopefully. Until then, you guys take care and have a good day.